forms? Or did God interject at each of the family level, or at the genus level, or at the species level? When does God intervene when he's intervening? At every single individual born, is God tweaking the system? You will not find consensus among creationists on this question. It's very interesting that they dissent among themselves about how often and when God intervenes. Anything from he set the whole system up at the beginning and stepped out and just let it run by itself, to he tweaks every single little molecule and genome in every single one of us that is born, and everything in between. Next slide. So, how do we know evolutionary theory is true? It's not true, capital T, true in a religious sense. It's not true in a political sense. Not true in a legal sense. You've heard two legal metaphors tonight. This is the wrong metaphor. Science is not the law. It's a different way of thinking completely. This is why when lawyers try to do science and scientists try to do law, they get messed up. They shouldn't do that. There's different ways of thinking. Science traffics in fine shades of gray, with probabilities of being more closer to truth or less closer to truth. But there is no capital T truth. However, we are confident that it's provisionally true. That is, could be wrong. We'll see. But it gives a coherent explanation of what we know. It's conciliant. That is, independent lines of inquiry all jump to the same conclusion. And it predicts new findings which so far have been confirmed empirically. For example, next slide. Just on the age of the Earth question, I just threw this in a sort of in the limo driving over here typing because I realized we were supposed to discuss the age of the Earth. I mean, how do we know how old the Earth is? A bunch of different ways. Potassium-argon dating. There's half a dozen different radioactive decay dating techniques, carbon-14 dating, plus the age of the moon rocks, the age of the solar system, the age of the universe. Now, this is the point. These different ages that scientists infer from the different techniques are not done in one lab or at one conference by one committee that says, hey, look, you know, we got that creationist conference coming up. We got to get our story straight on what our date is. It doesn't work that way. These are different scientists in different fields who go to different conferences and read different journals and don't even know each other. And they all independently come up with the same rough range of dates. The Earth is about 4.5 billion years old, give or take a couple 100,000 years. The universe is about, Dr. Hovind, it's about 14.5 billion now, we think. And it changes, but it's not changing like between 6,000 years and 20 billion. It's changing between 14, 14.5, maybe 15, maybe 13.5, depending on who's doing the measuring. Now listen, if they all came up with the exact same number, then I would be suspicious that somebody was cooking the data. But they don't. The numbers vary all over the board, but they vary within a range. And the fact that they vary, and yet they're still within that tight range, gives me great confidence that this is correct. Next slide. Another example. Tests of evolutionary theory. Early fossils of life should contain only single-cell organisms, and they do. You will not find a single human or any mammalian fossil in a bedding plane that has trilobites. Not one anywhere ever. Why is that? 2, organisms adapted to similar environments should evolve similar morphologies. They do. Whale bodies and fish bodies are all fusiform, designed to cut through the water smoothly. Why is that? Organisms sharing most of their DNA should develop following the same basic patterns. They do. Fossils found in different continents that were once united should be similar to each other. They do. Last slide here. So, in my rebuttal, then we'll come back to irreducible complexity. But my point in my opening argument here is that we have answers to these mysteries. Some of them we're very confident in. Others we're less confident in. Others we admit that we're just guessing. We don't know. More data needs to be collected. But even if we're wrong about all of it, it doesn't make the God hypothesis right. And I would caution you, don't hook your faith to any scientific argument, because what are you going to do if it's wrong? Or what are you going to do if it turns out we have an answer? Thank you.
How many lawyers do we have here this evening? Would you stand up? Lawyers? I'm here. That's true. There's one or two. I love how Michael dismisses the law. Tonight when he gets caught speeding, I hope he says to the officer, you're talking about the law. I want to talk about the science of motors, and it's not going to work. In evidence class, we learn that the more powerful your argument, the shorter the amount of time you need to make it. And so now in the 5-minute round, a lot of the rhetoric goes aside and a lot of the sidebars, but the hardcore analysis of how did we get here and when did we arrive? Dr. Hovind?
Is it 5-minute or 6-minute? My schedule says 6. I'm not going to get this done here. All right, let me start with Kyle Fraser's arguments. If we can get the screen black there. Reasons to believe. Reasons to believe what? Reasons to believe the Bible or reasons to believe Hugh Ross? I've always wondered about that one. Can we trust the Bible? Is the Bible literally true? Or do we need some guru to tell us what it means? The average person reading that book is not going to come up with the billions of years that he comes up with. The average person reading the Bible is going to come up with 6 days about 6,000 years ago. And the Bible's going to say, there's no death till Adam sinned. The question of where did energy, life, matter, information, and organization come from is still, I think, of course, Kyle Fraser's position is, God did it. I agree. But is God capable of doing it and telling us how he did it? As far as the red shift, I cover this in great detail on videotape number 7 of my series out there. Get my plug in here. Most of his arguments seem to be based on the assumption that the red shift proves the universe is expanding, and the universe may be expanding. But that still doesn't prove it's billions of years old. On day 1 or day 6, Adam was 0. But he didn't look 0. The trees had fruit on them. They were just 3 days old. They don't look like what we would think would be a 3-day-old tree. The God that I worship is capable of creating a fully mature, fully functioning universe in 6 days, just like he said. He said God is trillions and trillions and trillions of times more powerful than man. Man, to me, that's heresy. God is infinitely powerful. This is a limited God. My God's not limited, okay? Look at the background radiation as like looking at God. To me, that also would be heresy. God doesn't look like that at all. And nature is the first witness. That was interesting. And the Bible's the second witness. I like nature. I like science. I'm not against science, but folks, that's not how it's supposed to work. The God that I worship is not only capable of creating, he's capable of writing a book and telling us how he did it, and he can preserve that book for everybody today. That's the God that I worship. Now, for Michael Shermer, he said he was a born-again Church of Christ church member. I don't know if he was or wasn't. That's between him and God to judge, which he will face one day. The majority of audience here believe in God, which is because we're right in this case, all right? The God of the gaps, you know, miracles did it. You should look at the evolution theory and see how many miracles they have to pull in. You know, how did life get started? His argument that the Virgin Mary appeared on the side of a building as a natural explanation, I agree. I think that's dumb. I think it's a fundraiser for the Catholic Church. I think there's a lot of that stuff goes on. Okay? And I think he is very right to be skeptical of many of the things going on in Christianity. He's right. They ought to be skeptical. Okay? My position is it's good to be skeptical of things like that. Now, he ought to use the same skepticism on the evolution theory, but he's not doing that. Okay? If we cannot explain it, that does not mean God did it. I agree. There are many natural explanations. Okay? Do scientific explanations nullify our faith? Not at all. I love science. I don't know anything scientific that nullifies the Bible. I know that a lot of things the Bible contradicts from evolution theory, but evolution is not part of science. Evolution is a religion. He said nearly, by the way, let me point out here, nearly all branches of science were started by creationists, because he mentioned, I forget what the point was that brought that up, but I put it in here. Okay. Francis Bacon was a creationist, Kepler, Pascal, Boyle, Newton. The list is huge of people who, creationists, who started just about every single major branch of science today. The evolution theory has done nothing to the improvement of science. It is a useless theory, and it is counterproductive, in my opinion. So you can't claim that scientists are all evolutionists. They're not. There are thousands of scientists today who are creationists. Okay? Many major branches of science were started by creationists. Let's see, where did I leave off here?